Okay. Okay, cool. Got it.
Okay, we are recording.
All right. First one. Here we go. No pressure, right?
Hello. I'm this is Jeremy Perkins, coming to you live from Zoom. And my friend here, John.
Hey guys, this is John, coming from my office at Reinhardt University in Waleska, Georgia, which is just north of Canton, Georgia.
Very exciting, very exciting.
Yeah.
Um this is the first installment of what we hope to be a recurring series of conversations around um brass playing, trumpet playing, brass pedagogy, resources for musicians, resources for students, entrepreneurials, teachers, so on and so forth. Um, I feel like Mr. Klausman and I have a bunch of fun ideas that we've shared over the years, and just thought it'd be fun to kind of share some of those ideas and thoughts and tips and tricks with others and seeing if there'd be any benefit to that. Um, and so, yeah, so right now this is kind of just a foundation and hoping things adapt and evolve as they become more consistent. And yeah, we'll go from there. Any thoughts, John?
Oh no, I mean, I know we had been kind of, I guess, like spearheading and trying to figure out like what we want to do with this and whatnot, because there are some interesting different types of quote unquote podcasts, ideas, things out there where some of them are more of just interviews and some are actual, actual podcasts where they talk about very specific ideas. So I think it's really cool that our first, no pun intended here, collaboration with the podcast is going to be talking about collaborative practice and the benefits that we both have taken from it during our time in undergrad, grad school, post grad, and everything else that we're doing now to help us in our playing and our development, and to also our students and colleagues that we have formed and made friends with over the past, I don't know, gosh, almost 10 years now or so. So it'll be a lot of fun to talk about this topic. I think it's something that's not really talked a whole lot about in certain areas. So it'd be nice to talk about this. I remember, I think the interview that you did with me back in like 2020, we had talked a good bit about like the collaboration idea of collaborative practice. And I had mentioned that even when I was in grad school, it wasn't really a thing compared to what you and I had experienced during our time at in undergrad together. So it was a little strange and I get not necessarily eye opening, but kind of like, I don't know what the right word would be. Not necessarily disappointing, but just kind of a shock, I guess, that
Hmm.
that wasn't a culture, that wasn't a habit or a culture compared to what we had together during our time in undergrad.
Right, right. Um, Collaborative practice is something that I believe that as teachers and as students, it encourages a great collegial atmosphere, which those working together and collaborate with one another um, become better people, better team players, better section mates, better friends. The list goes on and on. There's a bunch of benefits. Um, you know, Usually when you see a group of musicians who are practicing with one another in a healthy and very wholesome manner, they tend to be that much better um, when they perform because they're so tuned in to one another's tendencies and where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. And it's a better method of communication musically. What if there are some musical decisions that you want to invoke and someone who you might not have experience working with, playing with, so on and so forth, is not going to be able to pick up on those intricacies than someone who's used to your playing, who's worked with you, who's practiced with you, who knows what risk you like to take. Yeah, so I'd say my opinions on collaborative practice are that I think it's great for everyone. It encourages and it invites a way of practicing and thinking that you can't necessarily do alone in the practice room. Um,
Yeah,
John, what are you
absolutely.
thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just absorbing everything you said because I think that's so true. Like, just to piggyback off of exactly what you said, that when it comes to collaborative practicing, it's not just necessarily tools to become a better musician. It's also tools on how to
Hmm,
become a better human being as well too. Because that saying, it's not if something happens, it's when something happens, or like when something goes
right,
wrong. It's like how to deal with certain situations of just life in general. Because I mean, you're not gonna. It's not always gonna be hunky dory rainbows and butterflies and stuff like that. Like there's going to be days where it's rainy and crappy and kind of
hmm,
where you're just like, I just don't want to do this right now. I'm not feeling it, and that's okay to have those feelings.
right.
But I think the tools that I learned, especially from, because I think we can both agree that we had a very collaborative undergrad trumpet studio together. That everyone, at least from what I can recall and what I remember, is that people would be practicing and people would come knock on doors and be like, hey, can I come in and practice with you, or can I come hear you play this thing? And
Hmm,
one of two things that I think that was really helpful for that is, one, it got you more comfortable in playing in front of other people, because I feel like that is something that is, especially now that we're coming out of the post COVID stuff, like at least here in my studio, that is something that a lot of my students are struggling with, is being comfortable playing in front of other people. Now granted, every each week we have a studio class, and I have them, I'll pick like one or two people to play to get used to those
hmm,
nerves. But we also, what we do that I find is really helpful, is we do a compliment sandwich. We give them positive feedback,
hmm,
something that they, something like of a critique, and then finishing it with a positive. Because I find that that a positive trumps a negative every single time, no matter what.
hmm,
So the fact of reinforcing something two times with two positives compared to the one, you're gonna it's that story of that saying of, you remember the beginning and you remember the end better than you do
right.
the middle. The middle is the journey, obviously.
Hmm,
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's really, really important of those different type of skills. I mean, I've used so many of those skills, whether it's me being called in last minute to go play at a church, and it's just me and a piano player or an organist, and we kind of have like only an hour beforehand to kind of figure out, okay, what do we want to do. We're just going to play straight hymns. Sometimes, if I'm lucky, I'll be able to have like I'll have like some of those Phil Smith hymns on me that I've used in the past that have worked out great. Literally just takes like 5 minutes to read through. Super, super easy. It's very more of a crowd pleaser type deal. And then also just in life in general, especially working on the business aspect of things, dealing with, when someone is wanting to contract us musicians, especially for, Christmas and Easter, and, something may not be agreeable, whether it's rehearsal times, pay, compensation, or whatever. Those collaborative tools and techniques have taught me how to kind of handle those things in a way where I don't come across as sounding like just being a total jerk,
hmm,
essentially.
hmm. Something that I do with my students every time they play for me or perform for me or whatever setting, I always ask them to assess their performance and tell me what they thought they did well at. And if they have nothing to say that they did well at, then I tell them to find something
Yeah.
in the music that they did that they thought that they did well at, because there's always going to be something that someone does, no matter how small or insignificant it may be. And in that scenario, it literally, the little things, the little things matter, and even if it's just one or two little things that you felt really good on, own those two little things, and then we'll focus about what's going wrong, and we'll assess there. But you can't go into a situation saying, oh, this is awful. You can't, that's not that's not how you learn, that's not how you grow. You have to like you said, you have to start from a place of success and then work backwards and kind of carve out the rough edges to where, the statue, the sculpture that you're trying to um portray can then become that much more ironed out and kink free. And I think with collaborative practice, there's a great sense of accountability that can be formed. Whenever we were in undergrad, I remember that we were assigned practice buddies for a month, and every other month you would change practice buddies, and depending on the practice buddy, it could be super, it's super like what you make out of it. It could be you could have two people who never meet, or you could have two people that that set aside time every day and work together, and it's kind of like if you're both learning different things and you're both practicing together and growing together, then it's kind of like there's always a kind of sense of just like someone's along for the ride with you, and that if you give up or if you have trouble or if you get burnt out, there's someone there from the sidelines who's supporting you, giving you encouragement, just wanting what's best for you. And
Yeah.
and then and on that same token, it's important to have the same kind of drive if your colleague or friend or practice buddy isn't, feeling it one week, or if something came up, they're having a bad playing day, or they aren't feeling too great mentally. You got to be there for that person, be their friend more than anything, and then instill a sense of accountability. Practice buddies, be friends and practice together. If you practice with your friends, you're only going to get better.
Yeah, no, 100%. I love what you said about that, especially from like our time when we were undergrad together, is that like how we had different practice buddies like each month, and then like the
Hmm.
following month we'd have someone different. And I thought that was so cool with just in that collaboration in its own, is that sometimes our teacher would pair us with someone who is the same grade level, or like same like
Hmm.
sophomore, junior, but then the following month he may have like like a junior and a freshman paired up together. And yeah, they're working on like especially like in the studio we were in, was I feel like it was more performance major based. So we were definitely more at least in junior senior time focusing on recital reps. So we were focused on
Hmm.
doing as much preparation on recital prep of whatever it is we were working on, whereas a freshman is still ironing out Clark's, Vizuti's. I mean, we're still doing those as well too, but they're
Right.
this is almost the first time that they've ever probably for the first time that some of these kids have ever seen or
Hmm.
heard of Clark, Vizzuti, Irons. I mean,
Right.
whatever have you, Schlossberg. Um,
Hmm.
but but it was still nice to still be able to go back, and when were practicing together, whether you were junior, senior, or working with a sophomore or freshman, that you were still
Hmm.
working on fundamentals together and building upon those fundamentals
Hmm.
together as well too. So I always thought that
Right.
was such an interesting collaboration together, because yeah, granted, yes, you are going to be working on different things in your lessons, like
Hmm.
same thing here, like with my studio here, is that the number one thing that we're always working on is sound production. Can we always play with our best sound and best tone no matter what? Now granted, some others we're working on more specific things based on their own personal needs, like something that
Hmm.
one of my teachers in Marie talked about all the time. She said, I am not a one size fits all teacher, and I'm like, that makes so much sense, as I will adjust my teaching to whatever is the student's needs, and a good teacher will do that automatically. Yes, I mean, a teacher will use a lot of the same material here and there, but we'll kind of
Hmm.
adjust and tweak it as we go along to help them adjust to that. But I always thought that was something that was really cool, when we
Yeah.
did have the practice, when we did those practice buddies.
My philosophy with students is that there is never going to be one distinct way to play the instrument, because every student is coming to you with a completely different anatomical setup where
Mm-hmm.
your pedagogy could completely clash with what their face looks like or how they're playing. And so I think the responsibility of the
Yeah.
teacher is you should have the training and the education to be able to adapt and be flexible and be able do those tweaks and to be able to even experiment and do trial and error because sometimes what's going to work with for one kid is going to be detrimental for the other. And so you have to be aware of that, and you have to preach that to your students that there's no one way for everything. I remember in undergrad when we did like a method book presentation, and our professor, he gave us all method books. And I remember the method book that I got was the Claude Gordon method book, and it was just not practical. It was just not practical for, let's say, a middle school trumpet player trying to learn the instrument. This for the book that I was presenting on was a book for someone who was definitely more seasoned and someone who was looking for a specific kind of playing, someone very focused on the strength and endurance and stamina of being a brass player from a much more athletic perspective. And for some people who try to use methods like that to learn the instrument, it's impractical and you can end up hurting yourself much more than doing results. And so I think another benefit of collaborative practice, especially with someone who might be older than you or have more experience, is that you're going to be practicing with someone who's experienced those pitfalls and someone who can almost guide you in a right direction. And then in turn, you can be that person for someone younger than you.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, that was actually like one of the first things I said to my studio here since I just started teaching here this past year. Was I told them straight up, I was like, listen, I don't have all the answers, and that's okay. When I said that, that was kind of like a sigh of relief I could see like on all their faces, like during our first studio class. As I told them, I was like, listen, I don't have all the answers. However, I do have a lot of answers to a lot of things that I have gone through and the experiences that I
Mhm.
have been through that have shaped me into the musician and the trumpet player that I am today. Now, when I said that too,
Right.
I said, however, when I said I don't have all the answers, when I said that, put like a caveat with it. And I also said, but we can figure it out and learn it together,
Right.
which makes and I think that helps grow and collaborates the bond between teacher and student more. Is that the
Mhm.
teacher is reaching down and showing the student like, hey, listen, I don't have all the answers, and that's okay. We can find those answers together, and that opens up the trust of the student to the teacher even more. At least that's what I have noticed here in my studio. Is
Mhm.
that, I mean, I know these kids here are, they trust me completely. I know that coming in as a new guy, younger guy, I'm only like 10 years older than some of them, and whatnot, which is weird because some of these kids, are like, I'm like 20, 21. I'm like, Jesus, I'm like, I'm only 30. I mean, so I'm sure probably some of them when they first walked in and saw me, they're like, you you're the new teacher, like you don't look that much older than us. I'm like, I'm not that much older than you, but I still think I have enough experience and wisdom to impart on this next generation of trumpet players and
Right.
musicians. So
Right. Good. Cool.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, when it comes to collaborative practice, what resources should students be utilizing? How can we make our normal trumpet fundamentals collaborative?
So
What's your
definitely
take?
my take is, I mean, I actually one of the like in my syllabus, I actually had it as a requirement. Like I only had them like required to get like 3 books if they didn't have them already. And I think it was Irons, Arbin's, and Wifrud's collaborative practice concepts. So that last one, the Wifrud's book, that one I kind of took a studio class back in the fall and just kind of went over how to utilize this book in a collaborative way of when you're practicing with someone else, because you can do them by yourself. There's nothing wrong with it at all. There's a lot of great fundamental exercises in that book, that I still use on a daily basis. I mean, I still use that third finger workout exercise. I think it's page 50 in his book, almost on a daily basis. Like when I'm like, okay, this third finger is just really not hammering down as much as I would like it to. So yeah, I took like a whole studio class and just kind of went over, how it works, what you can do, some different ideas of when you're practicing with others. because I really do. I love what it says. I mean, it's I think it's from the Bible. Actually, it's in his thing. It's from iron sharp as iron sharpens iron, so shall another person sharpen another person, which is so true. Like going back to what we were talking about, is that no matter what age difference there is, you can still learn something from another person. Like, and I say that, and I said that to them as well too. I was like, just as much as you guys will learn from me, I can still learn things from you guys as well too, and that gives them another kind of like, okay, cool. He's not all high and mighty, and he has all the answers to everything, which I don't think,
Right.
I don't think that should be our job as a teacher, anyways. Our job kind of invokes us to be vulnerable in certain areas, and that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with not having the answers to certain things or certain questions on that kind of thing.
Mhm.
The Wifrud's collaborative practice concepts uh, is the main book that I use in order to kind of help encourage that collaborative idea of that it's okay to practice with someone else and not be scared to do it. Obviously I had them order the physical copy of it. For some of them, like whatever, that they didn't have it yet. Like, I think I gave them like a 2 week kind of period to order it and get it in. One of the guys, one of my students, when he ordered, he actually got 2 copies on accident. He didn't realize like it was just a free copy, so we actually just have one in here as like our studio copy, which is really nice. So like, if any point in time, like if something's going kind of wacky and someone's like fundamentals, I'll just pop up that book and be like, hey, check out this exercise here and see what you can do with it. So,
Mhm.
but that's my main book that I like to use, because there's so many good things in there. I'm sure, I don't know if that's what you use as well, or if that's something that book that you advocate for as well.
Well, I definitely do advocate for it. Something that I really enjoy about the collaborative practice concepts is that um, Wifrod really breaks down practicing to some of its most basic variables, and he makes them collaborative. For example, he starts with just breathing and mouthpiece buzzing and how we can make that collaborative. And then
Yeah.
something that I love to do out of his book is the lead pipe games, where you're
Yep.
just doing call and response with students on their lead pipe and just encouraging, you know, good tone production, good compression, good
Yeah.
flow. I love and he encourages, resting as much as you're playing, and player A doing this, player B doing that. And I think
Yeah.
those exercises are good tools to utilize in other fundamental books, such as, the Clark book or the Irons book, the Arvin book, so on and so forth, and kind of using what Whiff is saying as, that you can do these collaborative ventures with other books as well. I mean, for example, like with all of the note bending exercises that he has in the collaborative practice concept,
Yeah.
those are so great because you have player one playing the exercise while player two is being the drone of sorts.
Yeah.
And so both players are working on intonation, both players are working on sound production quality, both are
Yeah.
staying in time, and they're taking turns being the primary musician and also being the accompaniment. And so um and it's much more interactive and hands-on in this setting. And it
Yeah.
goes, you can make it as technical or as simple as you want, but I think that book allows the student to break down practicing where anyone from someone starting day one to, seasoned pros can benefit from what he has to share in that
Yeah.
book.
Yeah. I just had a great thought there for a second. It came and went. It'll come back to me in just a second. Okay, that's what I was going to say. Is which is so great is that when you, and this is something I tell all my like studio and just private students as well too. When you're talking about like uh how with advocates for you can use this collaborative idea for other books and different methods and different
Mhm.
techniques. There are so many things, like for going back to what you said about lead pipe buzzing. I use that with like all my, especially like more so like my private high school students that I teach, of
Mhm.
blowing, like, because when you do lead pipe buzzing, obviously you and I know this very well, is when you take out the tuning slide, you're taking away the actual physical resistance of the instrument. So as soon as you play,
Mhm.
it's an immediate response. So I always tell them, I was like, okay, cool, put the tuning slide back in, blow through that resistance, and as soon as they do, it's like this gorgeous sound. I'm like, cool. Where did you get that? Where'd that come from? Like, and I was just like, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, from the lead pipe. I'm like, exactly. Um,
Hmm.
but a lot of those things are so beneficial that, at least to me, some of the, I guess the biggest thing that I got from doing the stuff from With Rudd's book is that, once you get out, and as you know this too, like once you get out of college, you have to become your own teacher
Hmm.
in certain aspects. Um, especially like right now, like, yes, I have mentors that I go and play for, and whatnot, that are here in the Atlanta area that I trust because they're good friends and they have great ears and they're great musicians and trumpet players. But at the same time too, that may be something like when I go and play for these people, they may say something that I'm like, I don't really agree with that. I'll still, soak it in and take it in and, try to apply those things that they said. And if it doesn't work for me, that doesn't, like you said, that, everyone's physiology is so different. And that's also the
Hmm.
fun slash annoying thing of being a brass teacher, is that, some things may work really, really well for some students, whereas, for some it may not work at all. So it's kind of like, well, there's you got to be semper gumby, always got to be flexible on that. Just got to make sure you can't just stick with one solid method that may work, tried and true for you. It may not work for someone else at all.
Hmm.
So it can be tough and frustrating, but once you finally figure out, like, I'm sure you probably had some of those moments as well with like students where like you've tried so many different things and you just maybe say something or use an analogy and all of a sudden it
Hmm.
works. And then you're like, it's like this huge weight of relief off of you as a teacher. You're just like, oh, cool, they finally got it. But of course, the next step is
Hmm.
like, okay, how can we reinforce to make sure that it stays that way? And I think that can
Right.
be something that can be used, especially in collaborative practice, is that, like, one of my students here, he's a freshman, has a great tone, great sound. And one of my other students is, he's got some chop problems right now. And so I kind of had them like practice together because he always said, he's like, dude, he always sounds so good. And I was like, why don't you guys go practice together? He's like, and he was just like,
Hmm.
when I said that, this was at the very beginning of the school year. It was when I said that, it was kind of like he gave me the one that's going through the chop problems, just kind of gave me a look like, what? I never thought of that. I'm like, yeah,
Hmm.
of course. I was like, that's how you can learn. You can learn from each other. So it's really cool to see
Right.
kind of like when those moments, the things that we talk and preach about to to our students actually like take fruition, and you're like, oh, sweet. It's one of those moments where you're just like,
Hmm.
cool. I am doing the right stuff. I am saying the right things. I'm not, taking these kids down the dark paths to the dark side or anything like that.
Right. Right.
It's
Another
reassuring more
book.
than anything for us.
Right. Exactly. Another book that I think students should utilize as far as collaboratively is definitely the Clark book. And the Clark book allows you to be so creative with how you can use it in a collaborative way for whether you're just one-on-one or a group of people. My favorite example is when we would build chords with the Clark 2 exercises, and we would create
Yeah,
major
love those.
chords, minor chords,
Minor, diminished. Yeah, I
seventh
remember those.
seventh chords, modal, all kinds of things. And
Wow.
it's fun, but it's encouraging good technique, and it's also, instilling, music theory, and
Yep.
also you can make it challenging by utilizing different articulations with like call and response. You can change tempos, change keys, do this and do that, um
Yeah,
and so I think the Clark book is
that's perfect
like
for
the
it.
second most collaborative book you can use besides the collaborative practice concepts themselves.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I also remember, I think the ones, because I remember we used to do like tech tests. Do you remember those?
Mhm.
Yeah, painful days. I remember the big ones that we used to do were I think it was stuff out of like violin, where someone would do the
Mhm.
slurs while someone would play the drone of that as well. And
Right.
it's very
Mhm.
similar to like, some of the stuff out of With Rudd's book. But I felt like that one was just a little bit more different because these things, at least those slurs that we did in the violin, were a lot more leapy and jumpy compared to some of the stuff that
Mm,
that's in Whiff's book, which is still fantastic stuff. But that was, I remember doing a lot of that stuff with I think it was, I mean, I don't even remember who my practice buddy was during that time, but I remember spending a
mhm.
lot of time on drones, working on that kind of stuff as well too. With them, like they would play like the fundamental pitch or whatever it was while I did the slur, and I could really hear, oh, okay, maybe I'm rising up a little sharp on this certain note, or maybe I'm
Right.
not making this slur as even as it could be compared to
Mhm.
another one below it or whatever. So yeah, but yeah, I think
Right.
the
And
Clark book is great for that as well. That you just unlocked like a memory
yeah,
when you said like, oh, you remember those chords we did on Clark too? I was like, whoa, flashback to like,
oh
yeah,
yeah.
like almost 10 years ago. Nuts.
And if you're not utilizing the people around you, it's kind of like you can't learn these things. You can't learn these things being alone in a room with no outside interaction. It's kind of like
Yeah.
you have all of these great musicians at your disposal, and you're all one same things, and you all have the same goals, hopefully, and um use each other
Yeah.
to help, use each other as inspiration to um
Hmm.
go and see concerts together, listen to music together, go do this, do that. It creates just creates so much more memories, good memories too, that just
Yeah.
further the bond between you and your instrument. Um,
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly what you said earlier too, like about just being nice. Like that goes such a
mhm,
long way. That's one of the first or second like studio classes we had here. That was something I talked about, like how to, establish your name and get your name out there,
right.
especially like if you're wanting to become more, because the school of music here, everyone's more education based. So
Mhm,
my goal for them is, obviously a lot of them are wanting to do more performances like solo hours and whatnot, which is great. I'm like, good, get used to that exposure because you're going to be like
mhm,
it's going to be magnified times like a million when you're a teacher, because every like
right.
administrators are going to be looking under you like with a microscope, making
Mhm,
sure that you're not doing anything stupid to mess up these kids at, the the kids' education. So I remember talking about that. I was like, just be nice to each other. Like, yeah, you can. It's
mhm,
okay to have disagreements with each other. That's okay. Like, that's gonna happen. That's just part of the nature of the beast of being a
right.
musician, and being a music major. Is you spend so much time with each other, but don't forget to, like you said, like go hang out, go do something, like go get dinner together, go see a movie together, go
Yeah.
see a concert together, to help
Mhm,
further that collaboration as whatever
right.
studio it may be or friendship you may have.
Mhm,
Just because, like you said, it creates those memories. Like we still have memories of like going to NTC, like going to Columbus
mhm,
State when we did that, and we went to what was that, North Texas. Those are great
mhm.
trips. So we still have those memories
Have
of those funny things that happened.
cultivate a life outside of the practice room that when you can come back, things will feel fresh, and
Yes.
instead of revolving your life around those things. But
Yes, that is something that I tell like all of my students, not just here at the university, in general.
mhm,
Like, I was like, do you guys have like an outside hobby outside of trumpet music? And some of them say yes, some of them do. I encourage them to find something. I was like, okay, what do you like to do? They're like, well, I like to ride my bike. I'm like, great, go ride your bike
right.
like for like 20, 30 minutes a day. Like just go like in your neighborhood or go find a bike trail somewhere and just ride. That's so great for you. One, it's good a form of exercise, gets the blood flow going, but also just clears your
Mhm,
mind, get out of your head, get out of that headspace, especially, I mean, as you and I both know, like especially working on certain pieces of music, whatever it may be, we can really, bog down and like,
mhm,
psychoanalyze every tiny little thing. Like you said, like when we do something bad or negative, we're just like, oh, I didn't do this right. I didn't do this right. But it's like,
mhm.
what about all the other things we did do correctly? I bet you those list of things, when you actually go back down, the things we did do correctly are probably much longer than things we didn't do correctly. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Well, John, looks like we're running short on time. on
And
our Zoom. So
darn those 40-minute Zoom thingies. I guess we'll have to probably
yeah,
upgrade at some point. Maybe
but
knock on wood. Maybe the university can get me a free upgrade.
right, or I don't know. I can probably log into my student account or something like that. But well, we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah.
I just, I guess my closing thoughts are just, collaborative practice is great in whatever ways you choose to do it, as long as, it's with someone who um you can be vulnerable with and open with and be
Yeah.
open-minded and flexible and be adaptable, Um
Yeah. That is such a good one right there. Just adaptability.
yeah, man. And
Like
just go with the
if I had to
flow
sum it
and
like yeah, like summing up
you
collaborative
know
practice in general, just be adaptable and be,
th-
that's just such a good one. I mean, just
there's some days where you might, need to take the time for yourself, and that's totally okay. But, you
yeah,
know, it never hurts to play for others, and it never hurts to give thoughts whenever you listen. And on that
yeah. I
note,
mean,
I say we call it.
all right. Well,
All
hopefully
right.
we get some
Well,
stuff rocking and rolling.
thank you for tuning in wherever you are finding this. Be on the lookout for some additional videos. And yeah, thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you soon. John, anything?
No, I mean, you pretty much said it pretty well. Like with the last words. I mean, like I said, adaptability is the best one. That's great. So.
All right. So long.